Let's get one thing straight. What we saw from the Browns last week wasn't just bad football, it was a full-blown system failure. A rookie quarterback, a bottom-tier offensive line, zero help from the coaching staff, and yet somehow, Shaduer Sanders is the one catching all the heat? Nah, something deeper is broken. And if you've been paying attention, you already know where the real problem lies. Because this isn't the first time a quarterback showed flashes of talent, only to be swallowed by the black hole that is Cleveland's offense. Ask Joe Flacco, ask Dylan Gabriel, ask Baker Mayfield. The result is always the same, different names, same downfall. And here's the real kicker, no coach in NFL history has collapsed like Kevin Stefanski just did. His winning percentage dropped from .552 to .188 in less than 2 seasons. That's not a slump, it's a disaster. So the question is just, what's wrong with Shaduer Sanders? The real question is, why does Cleveland keep destroying every quarterback it touches? Let's break it down. The game against the Buffalo Bills should have told you everything you needed to know about the mess in Cleveland. It wasn't just a loss. It wasn't even about the score. It was a spotlight on how unprepared, undisciplined, and completely outmatched this Browns offense is, not because of talent, but because of coaching, structure, and system failure. Now let's talk context, because you won't hear this on most sports talk shows. The Buffalo Bills are loaded, veteran-heavy, playoff-tested. This is a team gunning for a Super Bowl every single year, and they're built like it. These guys have been together for years. Solid schemes, explosive playmakers, smart coaching staff. And Cleveland? They rolled out a rookie quarterback behind an offensive line with 0 original starters. Not one. Every single guy up front was either a backup or a practice squad call-up. When have you ever seen an NFL offense function under those conditions? Shaduer Sanders wasn't just playing the Bills. He was fighting a war with borrowed weapons and no protection. Rookie QB, emergency O-line, few recognizable receivers, and coaching that looked completely out of rhythm. But here's what's wild, no one mentioned that. Not the fans, not the local radio hosts, not the national analysts. Instead of asking how a rookie was even able to stay alive out there, the narrative instantly became, he's not the guy. Really? When Tony Rizzo went off post-game, it wasn't just some emotional hot take. It was frustration boiling over from seeing the same exact scenario play out again and again. He pointed out what nobody else seemed to want to say. This kid was set up to fail. And yet, people reacted like he was already a bust. Like 5 half-chaotic games behind what's basically a third-string offense was enough to make a final judgment on a 21-year-old quarterback. Let's look closer at what that game actually told us. Heading into Buffalo, the coaching staff made one thing clear to Shaduer: get the ball out fast. Don't hold it. Don't wait. Don't create. Just catch, check, throw, rinse, and repeat. His average time to throw? The lowest it had been all year, 2.7 seconds. And yeah, the stat sheet doesn't look pretty, but the guy was running the game plan exactly how it was drawn up. The problem is that game plan sucked. He wasn't allowed to grow into the situation. He wasn't allowed to scramble, read, improvise, traits every top-tier QB in the league is given room to develop. Instead, he was turned into a robotic check-down device. Forget game-breaking plays downfield. Forget throwing to his strengths. The entire offense was conditioned to be afraid of turnovers, afraid of taking chances, afraid of playing to win. And when you play like that, you don't just kill plays, you kill development. This is the moment where even casual fans started to see the cracks, because it wasn't just Shaduer looking frozen. It felt like the entire offense was stuck in limbo. They'd take the snap, go through the motions, and try not to implode, not move the chains, not dominate physically, not take control. Just hold on and hope for the best. Does that sound like a game plan built to help a rookie succeed? Now think about the competition. The Buffalo Bills' defense is no joke. Pure pressure, exotic fronts, disguised coverages, disciplined and aggressive. These aren't the kind of defenders you test a first-year quarterback against, especially one with barely 5 starts under his belt and no real connection with his receivers yet. And let's talk about those receivers. Raheem Sanders, Malachi Corley, Harold Fan, inexperienced guys fighting for roster spots, not proven weapons. Shaduer wasn't set up with elite firepower. He was working with the leftovers of a failed season, trying to create something out of chaos while learning one of the most complex positions in sports on the fly. Still, the conversation the next day wasn't about those obstacles. No one said, the offense is broken, or this coaching staff might be ruining their rookie quarterback. Instead, it was the same recycled talking points. He's not ready. He won't make it in the league. Time to draft someone else. It's like they learned nothing after cycling through 50 quarterbacks since 1999. 50. And yet no one stops to think, maybe it's not the quarterback. Maybe it's the factory he's being tossed into. Rizzo called it out live. He could barely hold back. He said what so many Browns fans had been screaming for years. It's not the talent on the field that's the core problem, it's the people calling the plays. It's the voices in the quarterback's ears, the ones feeding them fear instead of strategy. When guys like Joe Flacco, literal Super Bowl MVPs, come into your building and look like washed-up scrubs under your system, but then go elsewhere and thrive, that tells you everything you need to know. And yet here we are, once again watching a rookie QB take the fall for an offensive scheme that hasn't worked in years. A coaching staff that was once considered innovative has now become stagnant, predictable, and painfully conservative. They don't adjust to their players, they force their players to adjust to them. And if the player doesn't fit the mold, they're discarded faster than last year's playbook. That game against Buffalo was never about whether Shaduer Sanders is the future. It was about whether this team is ever going to build a future around anyone. And judging by what we saw on that field, the answer, once again, looks like a flat-out no. If you strip away the hot takes and the lazy headlines, what you're left with is actually pretty simple. Shaduer Sanders is being judged like a finished product, but all he's gotten so far is the NFL version of basic training with broken gear. He's 5 games in. That's it. 5 starts, all at the end of a lost season. He wasn't developed through training camp. He didn't get a full season of reps. He didn't spend time building chemistry with a healthy O-line or a stable receiving core. He was thrown into chaos, expected to operate like he's Tom Brady in his 10th year, and dragged over the coals because he couldn't turn trash into touchdowns overnight. Look at the way this offense is designed. It's essentially quarterback prison. Everything is designed to minimize risk, avoid turnovers, and play not to lose, not to win. There's a difference. Kevin Stefanski and this staff are building quarterbacks like they're robots. Get the snap, dump it off, next play. No creativity, no improvisation, no breathing room. That may lower interception rates in your analytics sheet, but it also ruins development. You're not teaching a young guy how to read full field coverages or how to trust his instincts. You're teaching him how not to get yelled at during film sessions. And that turns talented players into mannequins. That's what happened to Dylan Gabriel. The kid came in with a reputation for playmaking, for being aggressive, for commanding games in college. And under Stefanski, he was coached so cautiously, he became paralyzed. He was scared to pull the trigger downfield, terrified of making a mistake. And you could see it, he'd hesitate for just a second, double clutch the ball, and then settle for something short and safe. That doesn't build a franchise quarterback. That creates a placeholder. Joe Flacco might be the most glaring example of all. Flacco's been around. He's seen every coverage, every blitz, every defensive scheme. But when he got plugged into the Browns' offense, it was like his football IQ evaporated. He looked unsure, disconnected, robotic. Everything you don't associate with a Super Bowl MVP. And yet, weeks later, the guy leaves Cleveland and looks alive again. Ripping throws, moving the chains, looking like a pro. What changed? He didn't magically remember how to play. He just left a place that was suffocating him. And now it's Shaduer's turn in the quarterback graveyard. What people don't want to admit is that the problem isn't that Shaduer Sanders is playing poorly. It's that he's being coached to fail. The scheme is built around fear instead of flexibility, around control instead of creativity. Stefanski's offensive philosophy is basically, don't make a mistake, not make a play. And that's exactly what you don't want when you're trying to build a young quarterback. It's hard enough coming into the league and adjusting to the speed, the complexity, and the pressure. But when the system you're in is also handcuffing you on every snap, you're not developing, you're surviving. And survival football never leads to growth. It leads to injury, burnout, and failure. It gives fans just enough to believe you're average and executives just enough reason to draft someone else next year. That's the pattern. The most dangerous thing happening in Cleveland right now isn't the losing. It's the false confidence in why they're losing. Because instead of admitting that the coaching staff has failed quarterbacks year after year, they pin the losses on the players and keep the same broken infrastructure in place. It's denial wrapped in arrogance. And Shedeur is just the latest victim. It's insane how quickly people forget that rookie quarterbacks are supposed to learn, not carry entire franchises. Trevor Lawrence didn't take over the league in 5 games. Josh Allen was a roller coaster in his first 2 years. Even Justin Herbert, who produced early, had the benefit of being in a system that let him use his arm and take risks. Meanwhile, Shaduer's out here dumping off 5-yard hitches with 3 defenders in his face before he can even blink. Receivers aren't helping either. It's a rotating cast of second and third stringers, and not a soul in that group has built chemistry with him over time. When your top wideout is a 22-year-old fighting to stay on the team, it's not a system set up for success. It's a patchwork experiment. You can't draw long-term conclusions from that. It's like judging a chef's skills based on what they whip up with frozen leftovers someone found in the break room fridge. But that hasn't stopped the noise, has it? Because Cleveland's got a habit of doing this. If a quarterback doesn't light it up immediately, the fans turn, the media piles on, and before you know it, the guy's being replaced before he's even started 10 games. Same story, different name, and nobody in the building is taking accountability. Not Stefanski, not the front office who set this up, not the analysts who pretend past failures were just flukes. The entire culture is wired to tear down quarterbacks before they stand a chance. And that's exactly what's starting to happen again in real time. Here, what people don't say out loud, but it's the truth. Shaduer Sanders isn't bad. Not yet. Not unless Cleveland makes him that way. Because if something doesn't change, the scheme, the staff, the philosophy, we're going to be back here again next season. New name, new face, same collapse. At this point, it doesn't even feel like bad luck anymore, it's a blueprint. Predictable, repetitive formula where quarterbacks come into Cleveland full of potential and walk out looking broken. Different names, different eras, same result. And it's not just a coincidence. It's not about bad apples or the occasional bad draft. It happens far too often and to far too many to be anything but systemic. Let's just call it what it is. Cleveland has mastered the art of killing quarterbacks. Look at the timeline. Baker Mayfield came into the league with swagger and fire. First overall pick, Rookie of the Year buzz. He was gutsy, aggressive, at times reckless, sure, but he owned the moment. Cleveland fans loved him for it. And then under Kevin Stefanski, little by little, that confidence started to disappear. The offense tightened, the leash got shorter, the creativity vanished. By the time Baker left town, his game looked like a twitchy echo of what it used to be. Forced, hesitant, mechanical. People blamed injuries, they blamed attitude. But they never blamed the structure that was dragging him down behind the scenes, the playbook that asked him to stop being Baker Mayfield and start being a generic pro-style game manager. And once he didn't fit that mold, done. On to the next. Fast forward. Enter Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP well into the back half of his career. Not expected to be elite, just expected to be stable. And in Stefanski's offense, he looked like he didn't belong in the league anymore. Short throws. Bad reads, no rhythm, like some backup who wandered in off the street. But then, without warning, he signs with another team and lights it up. Same arm, same body, different coaching. Flacco went from wash to warrior not because he changed, but because the system did. And then there's Dylan Gabriel, a raw but talented prospect with upside. You watch highlights of him outside the Browns system, you see flashes, confident throws, deep ball ability, a little swagger. But throw him into Stefanski's machine and everything tightens. Every throw is safe. Every read feels like it was made 5 seconds too late. He wasn't playing football, he was playing defense against his own instincts. Instead of letting the kid take risks and make mistakes, they coached the spark out of him. And now we're watching the exact same thing happen with Shaduer Sanders. Same approach, same suffocating strategy, same result. The Browns don't adapt to the quarterback, they attack the quarterback. They ask every guy, no matter his style or strengths, to conform to one outdated template. Don't move, don't vary, don't take over the game. Just follow the sheet, first read or bust, get the ball out before the pocket collapses. It's a survival mindset, not a winning one. Meanwhile, you look around the league and see what real development looks like. Josh Allen came into Buffalo as one of the most raw, inconsistent quarterbacks in recent memory. Big arm, no accuracy. Turnover machine. People clown the pick, but what did Buffalo do? They didn't force him to become some textbook passer by year 1. No, they let him grow, they let him run, let him air it out. They built around him, not in spite of him. Designed plays that gave him confidence instead of fear. Gave him actual, real-time opportunities to figure it out. And what happened? He became one of the best quarterbacks in the league, not because they changed who he was, but because they believed in what he could become. Cleveland does the opposite. They draft young quarterbacks, tell them to follow the script, and then wonder why none of them turn out like Allen or Lamar or Herbert. They don't create an environment that fosters confidence. They don't allow players to grow through failure. It's instant results or instant replacement. There are no second chances in Cleveland. And development? That doesn't even make the game plan. The goal isn't to make great quarterbacks, just quarterbacks who don't crash the car. And in that kind of environment, even the best drivers eventually hit a wall. So let's be honest. At this point, it almost doesn't matter who walks through those doors. Sanders, Gabriel, Flacco, Mayfield, name anyone. If the system doesn't change, if the philosophy doesn't shift, then the outcome never will. That's the pattern. Rinse and repeat. Year after year, quarterback after quarterback. A shiny new face shows up, fans get hopeful, and within a few months they're left wondering, what happened? And the team just shrugs and moves on like nothing ever went wrong. But something does go wrong, every single time. And it's not just on the players. Eventually, you have to stop blaming the passengers and start asking who's been driving the bus straight off a cliff for more than 2 decades. Here's the brutal truth that Browns fans are starting to wake up to. Kevin Stefanski's offensive system isn't just conservative, it's unfit for modern football. At its core, it's a philosophy designed to not lose, instead of one built to win. And when that mindset bleeds into the DNA of your team, especially your quarterbacks, it produces exactly what we keep seeing: cautious, hesitant, broken football. Look at how Stefanski runs his offense. Every play is scripted within an inch of its life. It's not about adapting to personnel or giving guys room to create. It's about control. Control the pace, control the reads, take no risks. Sounds clean on paper, but on the field, chaos. You can feel it in the way the ball is snapped. There's no room for improvisation, no second effort throws, no off-script magic. Once the primary route is covered, the play's dead. Quarterbacks are coached to live within the narrowest version of their potential. Don't look off safeties, don't extend the play, don't test the deep ball unless it's wide open. It all screams, just don't mess up. And guess what? That fear shows up on the tape. Quarterbacks flinch. Tight windows go untouched. Deep shots are second-guessed. There's no rhythm, no identity, no confidence. It's not even safe football anymore, it's paralyzed football. This is where the damage really happens. You take a young QB like Shaduer Sanders, who made a name for himself by commanding the field, moving the pocket, throwing with confidence, and you DMN near erase all of that. You ask him to operate in a limited structure, without protection, without chemistry, and without authority. And you want results? That's not development, that's sabotage. And the wildest part, it's completely predictable. We've already seen what happens when Stefanski coaches scared. It's the same pattern over and over again. Quarterbacks turn into check-down machines. Offenses lose their heartbeat. Games become exercises in just trying to survive until the final whistle. It's not strategy, it's damage control disguised as discipline. Meanwhile, successful teams across the league are doing the exact opposite. They're building systems around their quarterbacks. They're adjusting to strengths, not squeezing everyone into the same outdated mold. Look at Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. The Eagles didn't say, "Hey Jalen, here's the system, try to survive it." They built a system that fit him. Heavy RPOs, designed quarterback runs, quick reads with downfield aggression. The result? MVP-level play. In Buffalo, Josh Allen came into the league with mechanical issues so bad, analysts called him a bust before he took a snap. But the Bills didn't try to smooth off every edge immediately. They gave him the tools and room to grow. They let him make mistakes, knowing that those mistakes were the key to unlocking greatness. And it worked. Now look back at Cleveland. Different story. Quarterbacks here don't get time, don't get schemes tailored to them, don't get freedom. They get boxed in, evaluated with unrealistic expectations, and written off with no second chance. That's not developmental football, that's malpractice. Remember that playoff win from Stefanski's first year? It feels like 10 years ago now, doesn't it? Back then, people were calling him a genius. Clean play calls, balance, control. But since then, the league has evolved, and Stefanski hasn't. He's still calling games like it's 2006. The playbook hasn't changed, but the defenses have. And instead of adjusting, he's doubled down. Tighter calls, less risk, more control, and less production every single year. It's like he's trying to win modern football games with an outdated formula and dragging promising quarterbacks down with him in the process. And look, conservative coaching isn't always evil, but it's toxic when it's your default setting for everyone, every week, regardless of talent or opponent. Especially when you're dealing with a quarterback who needs the exact opposite: space, time, creativity, and vision. Let's not forget, Shaduer Sanders isn't a random pickup. This guy has shown poise, talent, and leadership at every level he's played. He's not some unpredictable gunslinger. He's precise when allowed to be. He can extend a play without collapsing it, but not when you chop his legs out and take all the decision-making out of his hands. That's what Stefanski's system does. It neuters quarterbacks, turns creators into calculators, and then pretends to be surprised when everything looks flat and uninspired. So ask yourself this: if the offense doesn't evolve, if the play calling doesn't trust any quarterback, if the philosophy continues to choke out development at every level, then why exactly should anyone believe that the next quarterback will be different? People say, just draft better, but talent isn't enough. You can draft a star, but if you hand him a broken system and coach him into fear, you'll turn him into another cautionary tale. And Cleveland's got a full cemetery of those already. This isn't just about Shaduer Sanders. It's about the next guy too, and the one after that. Because until the Browns fix the framework, the scheme, the mindset, the coaching, nothing else will matter. You can't build a winning franchise when every quarterback is playing to avoid failure. A real offense plays to win, and right now, Cleveland isn't even trying. At some point, wins and losses stop being about luck and they start being about leadership. And when you look at the numbers behind Kevin Stefanski's run as head coach, it's not a slump. It's not bad breaks. It's a collapse so severe, it almost doesn't seem real. Because when Stefanski started in Cleveland, the story was hopeful. He came in calm, polished, respected around the league. In his first 4 seasons, he posted a win percentage over .550, solid, competitive, even playoff-worthy. For a franchise that had burned through coaches like Kindling, he looked like the one who might finally stabilize the ship. But that version of Stefanski is long gone. Over the last 2 years, his win percentage has crashed to a 188 rate. You heard that right, 188. That's the kind of number that gets you fired before the post-game press conference. It's the worst 2-year coaching stretch by someone who started with a winning record in modern NFL history. No exaggeration, no spin. Statistically, there's no one else in league history who's fallen this far this fast without being shown the door. And let's be honest, you don't drop from .552 to .188 because of just one bad roster move or a couple of injuries. This isn't about a busted draft pick or bad weather games. This is what it looks like when the train goes off the rails from the top down, quietly, steadily, and with no one grabbing the wheel to fix it. And the craziest part, the franchise still doesn't seem to have a plan. Rumors started swirling right after the Bills game. NFL insider Ian Rappaport went live and said the Browns hadn't firmly decided Stefanski's future yet, after going 3-15 across 2 seasons. After overseeing one of the least productive, most regressive offenses in the NFL, and there's still indecision, that's not coaching stability. That's organizational paralysis. You're telling the fan base that this decade-long carousel of chaos is just going to keep spinning because no one at the top wants to admit there's a problem. Because change would mean taking accountability. And in Cleveland, that seems to be the one thing no one ever wants to do. It gets worse when you zoom out. Because it's not just the head coach underperforming. It's the entire football operation, the brain trust responsible for scouting, drafting, developing, and building this roster. General manager Andrew Berry, supposedly one of the league's bright young executives, has missed on wide receiver after wide receiver and built an offensive line that looks like it was pieced together with duct tape and prayer. This is the guy who's supposed to decide Stefanski's fate. The one who drafted most of the players that now can't move the ball, can't block a screen pass, and can't execute a game plan without looking shell-shocked. Let's be very clear. If Kevin Stefanski has underperformed, and he has, then Andrew Berry has enabled it. He's kept the coaching staff intact while the offense has flatlined. He's signed off on quarterbacks only to saddle them with bad protection and no receiving help. He's watched the same problems repeat and offered no bold solutions. And now we're supposed to believe he's going to fix it. The Browns are behaving like a front office scared of its own reflection. Instead of facing the reality that their entire offensive identity is rotten, they keep chasing another quick fix. Bring in a new quarterback, draft someone flashier, pretend the scheme is fine. It's not fine. This isn't growing pains. This is deep-rooted dysfunction, and the numbers prove it. We're not talking about one bad season. We're talking about a team that spiraled from potential playoff regular to league afterthought in the span of just 2 years, with 0 meaningful adjustments. When you lose 12 out of 15 and your offense ranks near the bottom of every major category, that's called a crisis. And meanwhile, the quarterback you drafted or traded for or rushed into games becomes the scapegoat every single time. But this isn't about the latest guy under center. It never was. The collapse isn't coming from the pocket. It's coming from the sideline, from the front office, and from the top floors of the building where the same decisions get made over and over and never questioned. Kevin Stefanski's historic drop in winning percentage is the symptom. The real disease is a franchise allergic to accountability. Under different administrations, different coaches, different quarterbacks, it's always the same DNA: excuse-making, delusion, denial. Every year it's a fresh storyline, but the script never changes. And fans aren't blind, they see it. You can put band-aids on the depth chart, you can draft quarterbacks with highlight reels, you can even win a couple meaningless late-season games. But the truth eventually shows up in the standings, and this season, it's screaming at the top of its lungs. So if Cleveland is serious about turning this around, it's going to take more than another prospect and a fresh coat of optimism. It's going to take admitting that the system itself is flawed, that the coaching isn't working, that the front office hasn't earned another round. Until then, expect the Stefanski stat line to keep dropping and expect more quarterbacks to disappear into that Cleveland black hole, one after the other. So now that the excuses have run out, let's address the question that everyone in Cleveland seems way too eager to answer without thinking. Why is Shaduer Sanders getting dragged like he's a washed-up veteran who just blew a playoff game, instead of a rookie thrown to the wolves with zero protection and bottom-tier coaching? Because somehow, after 5 games stuck inside a broken offense, the conversation has already shifted to, he's not the guy. That's the narrative. That's the headline. And that's not just wrong, it's reckless. Since when did 5 games, 5 chaotic, end-of-season, garbage-time scraps become the standard for judging a rookie's entire career? How does this fan base watch a 21-year-old trotted out behind a bandaged offensive line with third-string receivers and act like he's supposed to walk out there and look like vintage Peyton Manning? You want to know who Shedeur was throwing to last week? His top targets were Raheem Sanders, Malachi Corley, Harold Fannin Jr., Tavon Williams. Hard-working young guys, sure, but let's stop pretending they're Pro Bowl-caliber weapons. These are fringe roster players, developmental pieces, not difference makers, not guys you build around. And yet, Shaduer's expected to deliver 300-yard stat lines, perfect reads, impossible throws. With defenders in his face 2 seconds after every snap, and a headset full of plays designed to survive, not to strike. Where's the nuance? Where's the perspective? At this point, you'd think Browns fans would have experience breaking this pattern, but somehow, they've learned nothing from watching quarterback after quarterback collapse in this exact same scenario. This isn't just about Sanders. This is about compounding failure year after year and pretending it's always someone else's fault. 40, 50, 50 quarterbacks since 1999, and they all magically had the same issue? Spoiler alert, they didn't. The only consistent problem wasn't under center, it was on the sideline and in the front office. Yet somehow, every single time, the finger points at the latest quarterback. He's not decisive enough. He's not accurate enough. He's not the right fit for Cleveland. The excuses change, but the scapegoating doesn't. The media jumps on it too. You get these local post-game panels instantly tearing Sanders down, calling him a bust, demanding the next guy. But none of them mention the context. None of them acknowledge what he's working with. And even fewer are willing to admit that quarterback development in Cleveland doesn't just fail, it gets smothered. Tony Rizzo, love him or hate him, was one of the only ones to say it directly. He didn't go on some blind hype rant for Sanders. He didn't try to turn him into a franchise messiah. He just said, give the kid a chance. That's it. Give him a real offensive line. Give him something close to experience at wide receiver. Give him structured development. Anything, something. The Browns haven't done that, not with Shedeur, not with Baker, not with any of the 50 guys they've marched out over the past 25 years. Browns fans are so used to quarterback failure, they've convinced themselves it's always the guy themselves. But look at what happens when these same QBs leave. Baker goes to Tampa and looks alive again. Flacco leaves and turns in one of his best stretches in years. The system in Cleveland doesn't just underperform, it kills confidence. And once that's gone, everything else goes with it. You want to know what confidence looks like? Look at how the Chiefs handled Mahomes in his rookie year. He didn't play until week 17. He sat, learned the system, developed behind a veteran starter, and the franchise didn't feel the need to rush the process. Cleveland, they throw rookies into live fire and wonder why they get burned. Shaduer's 5 games should have been seen for what they were: a late-season trial behind a patched-together team, playing against playoff defenses with practice squad help. It's not about wins or style points, it's about giving him reps without wrecking his development. Instead, they gave him chaos. And now, the exact same crowd that cheered his arrival is pushing him out the door before he's even had a full offseason. Ask yourself, do you actually know who Shaduer Sanders is as an NFL quarterback? Because 5 games in this offense doesn't tell you anything. It's like judging a musician based on a soundcheck with a broken mic and no band. It's worthless, it's meaningless, it's lazy. And yet, in Cleveland, it's tradition. And that's the tragedy here. It's not just that the Browns are failing again. It's that they're following the script perfectly. Destroy the environment, rush the quarterback into action, offer no support, then rip him apart when he doesn't produce instant miracles. Then hit restart with the next guy and ask fans to believe this time will be different. But nothing's different. Not the culture, not the scheme, not the timeline. And unless that changes, it won't matter if the next quarterback is Shaduer Sanders, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Milroe, or Jesus Christ in shoulder pads. The outcome will be the same. Another talent, another body, another chapter in a never-ending story that always ends the same way. At some point, you have to stop looking at the symptoms and call out the disease. And for the Cleveland Browns, it's not just about Kevin Stefanski. It's not just about how many quarterbacks have flamed out. It's about a top-down system of dysfunction that's been poisoning this franchise for over 2 decades. Let's lay it out. Since 1999, the Browns have fired 10 head coaches, rolled through more than 50 quarterbacks, and replaced GMs like light bulbs in a hallway, all while somehow convincing fans that this year will be the one it finally clicks. But it never clicks because the core structure never changes. And this offseason might be the most dangerous one yet. Because once again, the front office has a decision to make. Do they clean house? Or do they double down on the people who led them straight into disaster? Reports say General Manager Andrew Berry will be heavily involved in deciding Kevin Stefanski's fate. Just let that sit for a moment. The man who built this offense, signed off on every failed coaching hire and every questionable draft pick, and couldn't assemble a functioning offensive line, is now supposed to decide how to fix all of it. That's like putting the guy who crashed the car in charge of the repair shop. This is a front office that keeps missing the point. You don't fix Cleveland's problems by drafting a new quarterback every year. You fix them by building an environment where that quarterback has a chance to evolve, a chance to lead, a chance to fail without immediately being replaced. You fix it by hiring a coaching staff that knows how to develop talent, not just waste it. But year after year, Cleveland keeps trying to shortcut the whole process, acting like all it takes is the right quarterback to magically lift the franchise out of the basement. Spoiler alert, they're not coming. Not like this. Not into this chaos. You could hand Cleveland a prime Andrew Luck, a healthy RGII, or a clone Tom Brady, and within the year, he'd look just like the others, beaten up, frustrated, and staring down the barrel of another rebuild. Because it's not about the name on the jersey, it's about the rot in the building. Look at the way this team operates. Starters go down, and there's no depth. Offensive linemen get hurt, and the replacements are barely game day ready. Receivers can't separate, and route trees feel like they're straight from a high school playbook. And everything hinges on a quarterback making perfect reads in 2.5 seconds or less while getting no help from scheme or strategy or structure. That's not a rough patch. That's systemic negligence. And the scary thing, nobody in a position of power seems capable or willing to disrupt the cycle. They just keep swapping out players at the bottom of the roster, hoping fresh faces will distract fans from the fact that leadership is still broken. You know who sees it? Players, coaches, insiders around the league. The whispers are there. Cleveland has become a place you go to stall your career, not build it. A place where development gets replaced with damage control. Where optimism is sold all offseason and reality comes crashing in by Thanksgiving every year. Even the most loyal Browns fans, the diehards, the old heads, the lifers are getting tired of it. They've seen this movie 100 times. Different cast, same ending. Ownership hits reset with just enough change to feel fresh, but not enough to fix what's actually broken. So here we are again. Franchise quarterback burned out in 5 games. Head coach presiding over one of the steepest win percentage drops in modern NFL history. A GM making multi-year decisions with a shaky track record. and a national media already gearing up their next mock draft while pretending none of this has happened before. But deep down, everyone knows it. This doesn't change until the Browns confront the reality they've been avoiding for 25 years. It's not the quarterbacks. It's the franchise. No other city in football runs through quarterbacks like this. No other team has had this many restarts, redos, rebuilds, and rebrands, and still ended up in the same spot. It's dysfunction on a loop. And now, it's on the verge of taking down another young talent before he's even had a fair shot. The future of this team doesn't depend on whether they draft a better quarterback next year. It depends on whether they finally fix the machine that keeps chewing them up. So now the Browns are at a crossroads again. The offseason is coming. Another spring full of possibilities, another draft full of promises. And the question everyone's quietly asking inside that building, maybe even afraid to say out loud, is this: now what? Do they ride with Shaduer Sanders? Do they clean house and start from scratch? Do they bring in another quarterback, slap a new face on an old system, and sell fans the same hope they've been selling since 1999? Because this time, there's no hiding. The decisions made over the next few months will define the Browns for the next 5 years minimum. And the way it's heading, it's not toward clarity, it's toward panic. Here's the most likely scenario. They blame the quarterback, again. They say Shaduer's not the guy, that he did show enough. That 5 games behind scrambling linemen and no real weapons was supposed to be enough to prove he's a franchise player, and since it wasn't perfect. Next. Then, come April, they draft another QB. Maybe it's Jaden Daniels. Maybe it's Jalen Milroe. Maybe it's whoever has the best pro day and gets hyped by analysts for a month straight. They'll put out off-season videos, tweet training camp stats, and pump up the idea that this quarterback is going to be different. Sound familiar? It should, because it's the exact blueprint they've followed year after year. Blame the old guy, crown the new guy, keep everything else the same, and pray the outcome changes. Spoiler, it won't, because a new quarterback doesn't fix bad coaching. He doesn't magically teach wideouts how to separate. He can't build continuity on an offensive line that's replaced half its starters every season. He can't rewrite a system that's been stale for 3 years. And he damn sure can't undo the culture built on fear, blame, and reactionary decision-making. Throwing in a new quarterback without fixing any of the core issues is like swapping out the engine of a totaled car and expecting it to win races. It looks different for a minute. It might even sound different. But the fundamentals haven't changed, and the crash is already coming. If the Browns were serious about building a future, a real one, they wouldn't be talking about who's under center just yet. They'd be talking about who's designing the offense, who's leading the locker room, who's creating an environment where a quarterback can actually grow, not just survive. You don't need a miracle draft pick. You don't need some once-in-a-generation talent. You need a system that works. You need structure. You need patience. You need development. All the things Cleveland hasn't had at the same time, ever. That's what transformed teams like Buffalo, Philly, Kansas City, Baltimore. It wasn't just the quarterback. It was the organization wrapped around him. Coaches that understood timing, trust, pace, design. General managers who knew how to build a roster with real depth. Ownership that stayed the hell out of the way and let football people make football decisions. Cleveland, they can't even decide if they want to commit to their head coach 2 full years after his win rate fell off a cliff. And the GM is still out here pretending these offensive holes are just part of some long-term process. Process. How long do you get to call it a process before people start using the real word for it? Failure. And make no mistake, if the Browns choose to press reset again, while leaving the same coaching, culture, and system intact, they're choosing failure. They're choosing to waste another quarterback. They're choosing to run it back with a formula that's already burned through dozens before. And you know what? It'll work for a while. Fans will get excited. The media will get quiet. The preseason games will look promising. But then comes the regular season. And by week 6, if history stays true, they'll be right back where they started. Wondering why the one pick can't move the chains. Wondering why the offense looks confused. Wondering how another young talent suddenly looks overwhelmed, just like all the others. Because they were never the problem to begin with. That's the reality looming over this entire organization like a storm that never leaves the sky. Every time there's a glimpse of progress, it gets drowned out by the system they refuse to fix, the one that eats potential and spits out excuses. The Browns don't need to make history this offseason. They just need to stop repeating it. But until they do, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Let's just be honest with ourselves, everyone sees it. You can feel it in the losses. You hear it in the interviews. You see it written across the body language on the sidelines. The Browns aren't just struggling, they're caught in a loop. A cursed routine where every new quarterback becomes a stand-in for hope, just long enough to sell jerseys and headlines before he's broken by the exact same system that ruined the last one. Shaduer Sanders, he's not a superhero, he's a rookie. One with real talent and a real shot if someone actually builds around him. But what Cleveland gave him wasn't development. It was a demolition job. 5 games in a haunted house and they expect him to come out untouched. It's not going to change with another draft, another quarterback, another clever press conference about culture or long-term vision. Not unless the organization tears out the roots, because the problem was never just play calling. It was never just the injuries. It was never just bad luck. It was the arrogance of believing that you could keep everything broken except the quarterback and still win. And until Cleveland finally decides to fix the foundation, not just the facade, this thing is going to keep happening. The carousel will keep spinning. The names on the back of the jersey will change, but the outcome never will. The Browns don't need to find the guy. They need to stop turning the guy into the next casualty. Because right now, they don't have a system for creating a franchise quarterback. They have a machine for ruining them. And if nothing changes, it won't matter who's next.